Hey everybody, it's Riley, your friend from Los Angeles. My little rant about Airbnb and Vacasa Vacation Rentals. That name, so you never have to deal with them, is Vacasa Vacation Rentals. It's got me thinking about travel. And don't worry, this is not going to be me talking about my study abroad experience and how it made me such a better person. This is going to be me mocking myself relentlessly, so it should be fun to listen to. We hope. I have been lucky enough to travel quite a bit in my life by this point. I say quite a bit in that I have been outside the US, which I feel really lucky about. But I am sad to say that I am the dumb American in every country and situation I've gone to. I would like to say it's not my fault, it's just the way I was raised, but as we have all learned, that's not an excuse. I've tried to learn some lessons everywhere that I go about how to be less of the dumb American, but unfortunately, the one lesson I've ultimately learned by traveling is that everywhere I go, my stereotypes about that place are more and more upheld. For instance, I did do study abroad. Sneak attack! I am going to talk about my study abroad experience. The British are extremely polite. They are just as polite as you guessed from Hugh Grant stumbling over his words and Colin Firth being unable to utter a sentence without looking upset at himself for speaking. They're extremely polite. At least the area that I was. Admittedly, I was in Cambridge, but I even traveled a bit in London and Nottingham. But the British are extremely polite. When I first went to the UK, it was actually with my mom. We went into like Piccadilly Square. I think that's what it was. That I might just be pulling a name out of my ass. But we went into this like big shopping area in London. It's supposed to be very historical, and there's all these performers and people doing these really cool sets to like huge crowds. And there was a guy there who was this acrobat. He was up on a tightrope. By the time we walked up, he was already like making jokes, he was cracking jokes and like juggling things. And me and my mom were standing there and we started clapping and hooting. We were woo at like everything that he did. And he goes, "Ah, someone's yelling. There are Americans in the audience," which I thought was hilarious and fair, but I didn't see what a startling difference between our reaction and the British reaction was until the end of his performance. So the big finale of this guy's show is he is juggling fire, like chopping cleavers, juggling some of those as well, and also hats that are being thrown to him by a child from the crowd. Somebody volunteered their 3-year-old to run out and help in this act, which was psycho, but I guess everybody trusted this guy because he was pretty damn impressive with what he did. So this like little 3-year-old gets handed a hat by this guy's assistant, get multiple hats, and is told to throw them. So obviously it's a 3-year-old, they can't throw for shit. So this kid does not like throw very well. And the guy, while juggling fire and cleavers, manages to catch every hat and throw them onto his head. And then he manages, he puts out all the fire and all the cleavers, and he like jumps off and practically does a friggin' barrel roll like he's a jet. And he lands in front of the kid and he doffs his hat to the child and says, "Thank you, ma'am." And it was incredible. And so me and my mom look at each other like, holy shit. And we just lose our minds. Like this guy just did on top of a tightrope. It was flipping. It was dangerous. There were children involved. Everyone came out all right. Like this guy deserved a loud, standing ovation. And so we just go at it, We're like, because that's how you show appreciation if you're watching a performance. At least I thought that's how you do it. That's apparently just how you do it in the US, because after a couple of moments, I realized we were the only ones clapping. And we were definitely the only ones screaming. I stopped and looked around, and this huge crowd of British spectators is golf clapping. like they've just seen, like someone has just wrapped up a little interesting ditty on the pianoforte. They're just daintily clapping. And I'm like, shit, this guy just juggled fire over a 3-year-old's head, and y'all can't let out a little hoot? Nobody can hoot? But then, of course, at the end of the thing, the guy's like, well, there are Americans in the audience, and he's like, I accept whatever you guys can, whatever the crowd can donate. He's like, 10s or 20s, but for Americans, it's $50. I guess 50 pounds is what he would have said, whatever. Like I said, I'm the dumb American. But we gave the guy 50 pounds, because that was damn impressive. But it was the funniest thing, though, is at least I have a little bit of the repentance when I don't fit into other places' cultural mores. I recognize that I am visiting a place. I should not impose my own ideas of behavior if I am going into somebody else's home, somebody else's country. My mom does not think the same way. So when I turned to her and said, Mom, no one else is yelling, she's, I don't give a damn, this guy did great, and just yelled louder. A little bit after that, we were wandering around, and that was, of course, not the last run-in my mother had with general British politeness. We wanted to have, you're in England. Tea's a big deal. All right, so we wanted the authentic British London tea experience. So after walking around for a while, we went to Starbucks. We walk in, and there's this huge, long line, which is a surprising side effect of the British politeness. And I know there's long lines in like US cities, and that's fine. But the thing is, the line was not moving quickly. And no one was saying anything about it. No one was grousing. Everyone was like, oh, well, I'm sure they're doing the best. And then when people got up to the register, they just had like a conversation. They took their time looking at the board. Drove us nuts. We were like, let's go. Get in, get out, know your order. Let's go. But the thing I learned being in England and Europe is that the American obsession with factory-like, our self-perceived obsession with factory-like efficiency, that we need things done right now for us, and that's how things should be done, is very us, and not so much other places. But we finally get to the front of the line. I ordered just, my caramel frappuccino, because that's the type of hoe I am. And my mom always gets a chai tea. That's her particular brand of honess. And she gets her chai tea, and then she was hungry, and usually she gets an oatmeal at Starbucks. And she looks up at the menu. She's in a whole other country. She looks up at the menu and doesn't see oatmeal. And she turns to me and she's like, do you see oatmeal? And I'm like, no, Mom, just leave it alone. We'll get something else to eat. And she's like, no, I want an oatmeal. It's a Starbucks. They're gonna have an oatmeal. We're across an ocean. And she's like, well, it's Starbucks. It's still gonna be arranged exactly to my pleasure. So she stands there and says to this poor young guy at the cash register, yeah, so a chai tea and an oatmeal. That's not the word for anything in England. So he looks at her and he blinks. And he says, well, do you mean porridge? And the weirdest thing to me about, and my mom does not have any kind of an accent, like, of course she has an American accent, but she doesn't have like a thick Southern drawl. She's not from New York. She's like from Oregon, California and Oregon. She's very loud and she enunciates everything. No one in England could understand what she was saying, which was hilarious because she is not used to people not getting right away what she wants. And so I kept having to translate, which was weird. And people thought that I had an Irish accent, which I assume is because I have red hair and I sound like I'm slurring. She tells this young guy, oatmeal. I want oatmeal. Do you have oatmeal? He's got no fucking clue what she's asking for. And he's like, do you mean porridge? He's he got it, the oatmeal porridge, he understood that much. And my mom's no idea what he just said. She's got no clue. And I'm like, Mom, they have porridge. That's like their word for it. And she's like, no. She's like, I don't want porridge. What? She's like, what am I, a child in a storybook? I don't want porridge. She looks the guy dead in the eye and goes, Oatmeal. And at this point, I'm like, can I sneak away into the crowd? I'll just go to a pub and pretend to be Irish and try to walk away from whatever is happening here. But the guy, he freaks out because now there's this, to his perception, irate American woman, which is just my mom's base level mood looks irate to a British person. And he says, oh, he's gonna run. He's like, he says, I'm not gonna do the British accent because at this point I feel like I'm butchering it and I don't want to. I don't want to be that person who just butchers all these foreign accents that I'm trying. He's like, I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have any right now. He's like, I can go check the basement. There's a vat in the basement. My mom cannot understand a word that he's saying, and I'm a little confused. There's a vat in the basement? Do they just have like a porridge gnome down there just stirring a cauldron? My mom is just like, do you have oatmeal? And the guy gets out from behind the counter and books it out of the store. He was the only person behind the counter. He ran away from my mother. So now it's just us and 15 extremely polite British people in this long ass line crowded into the store. And my mom turns to me and goes, "What'd I say?" And I'm like, Mom, he's trying to go find you some oatmeal. He was gone a long time. We stood there for like 15 minutes and I'm like, I think he's like run to a store or something. Like he's gonna go like get her some Quaker oats and just stir up an instant oatmeal just to get this crazy American lady to stop yelling at him. Finally he comes back and he's so apologetic. He is like just so polite and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, the vat is empty. There is nothing I could do. The vat is empty. And my mom says, oh, that's fine. Just the chai tea then. Could have spared all of us about a half an hour, but that's fine. One of the things I really liked about British people and their sense of humor is that I did that bit, basically everything that I just did for you, I did that bit when I was doing stand-up in the UK. And it killed. The British just like fell over themselves laughing. They love, 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 love. It's a huge aspect of British comedy to laugh at yourself and be even just in like normal conversation. If you're a British person and you think I'm totally wrong and off base about any of this or all of this, please just tell me. Just tell me if I'm wrong, because I might be totally wrong. But this is what I observed while I was there for like 6 months. And I was doing stand-up, and the British just love, love, love to laugh at themselves. Literally, one of my jokes was, you guys really, really like your tea. And people would die. They're just falling over themselves. People are yelling back, we do enjoy a cup of tea. Just murdered. I did the same bits that I just did, along with some other. I had a set where I talked a lot about my family and my family's history, and I talked about like what being American in the UK did, and just some things I noticed about my fellow Americans who were in my kind of cohort while I was there. My fellow Americans. I was there with other Americans, and I did the same exact set twice. I did it once for a very, very British audience. It was mostly British people, and it killed. They were just dying. They were like, yes, we are quiet, and you are loud. Like, just that fact of life just really tickled them. Then I did the same exact set for Americans. They were not as entertained. When I made, jokes about the British, that got some laughs. People were willing to laugh at the British. But when I did jokes about Americans being loud and obnoxious, that did not get any laughs. People were not entertained by that. And that's when I figured out a key difference in stand-up to American audiences and British audiences. Brits are much more comfortable laughing at themselves, which is just an interesting aside. I don't have a punchline for this moment. It's just an interesting aside that I noticed about comedy, that an American audience have to be a little more careful about making jokes directly at their expense, which is interesting. And, I have realized that maybe the British audiences laughed harder because they were more polite and they were being nice to me. That thought haunts me. One thing I didn't expect about British is that the British, at least the people I met, they loved American accents. People would ask me to say things. I thought they were making fun of me. They give me simple fucking things to say. Like, say, let's go for a walk. And I'd be like, okay, let's go for a walk. And they'd be like, oh my god, that is such an intriguing way to say that word. Walk. Walk. As they loved the American accent, and actually, it's like the joke that people go away to study in England and then they come back like talking like a British person. Before I went to England, I was going to school in Texas. I never ever had a Texas accent or sounded like a Texan. My time in England, I came back to Texas. I said y'all. I had a little bit of a drawl. Like, just being there gave me a little bit more of that southern. By the time I came back, I sounded like I was born and raised in Texas. Probably not to a Texan, but to a British person, it sure worked. To a cute British boy. That fake ass Texas accent worked. And now I say y'all all the time. And I feel like a poser because I am not from Texas. But y'all is just a convenient, like, what am I supposed to? You all. All of you. You guys. Just y'all makes more sense. So I'm glad that stayed. But yeah, came home with a Texas accent from my 6 months trip to England. So, I try to learn a little bit from everywhere I go. Don't know what that taught me. Be yourself? That's not what I learned.